I believe the solution doesn't lie with a new trainer. I don't believe it lies with anyone. I think if all Joshua needed to do, in my opinion, to win that fight, and in our whole team's opinion to win that fight is, Usyk's obviously a cruiserweight. He's coming up from cruiserweight. He's a smaller man. He's not a gigantic man. You're a 6'6" dinosaur, 18.5 stone, whatever. Get your hands up around your face. Go forward, bulldoze him.
Be a brute, yeah.
That's all he had to do to win that fight.
That, yeah.
And I believe if he did do that, he would have won. And in this second fight, if Joshua doesn't need new trainers and all this sort of stuff, get your hands up around your face and use your tactics. You're not a boxer. He's not a boxer. He's a powerhouse. Go forward and try and get him out of there. And I do believe 6, 7, 8 rounds down the way, if Joshua's got the gas tank for that, I don't really know. I do believe Usyk will start feeling it. I do believe he'll get Usyk out of there late on if he applies them tactics. He doesn't need to try and do all these things. He needs to go forward and put it on him. Because he's the bigger man, he's the heavier man, he's the stronger man. So use your attributes and just go forward. And there's no need for new trainers, any of that. Just have the balls, and just get straight into him. That's all he has to do to win that fight, in my opinion.
With nearly reaching 7 months from the first meeting between Joshua and Usyk late September last year that ended in a crushing victory for Usyk by unanimous decision, ultimately led AJ losing his WBO, WBA, IBO and IBF titles, as well as no longer continuing to reign as the unified heavyweight champion of the world. Even despite all this, not much has exactly been said on both parties in regards to when they will fight a rematch, as well as considering the outcome of the first fight, and now AJ is more than extremely willing to initiate the rematch clause in hope for redemption. In other words, Joshua might have another shot to regain his heavyweight belt and hopefully silence the haters. Although Joshua was extremely willing to fight again, it is still unclear whether or not Usyk will be ready to return to the ring due to the situation of his home country and other geopolitical affairs currently happening at this current time. And whether Alexander is able to return back, the white elephant still remains to linger in the room. And this lingering elephant is the fact that as it currently stands, Joshua cannot use his previous game plan to defeat Usyk in an attempt to outbox him again. And if he does this, he is simply looking to lose again by throwing away another great opportunity, but rather employ a different tactic to overpower and to make known his physicality over Usyk. And so Joshua honestly had his one and only chance to show the entire world whether he was capable in going toe to toe with probably one of the finest technical boxers of the heavyweight division, but proved to many he wasn't quite up to scratch against the Ukrainian. In short, Joshua needs to have a different game plan to approach this rematch, by willing to drop his ego aside in hope to prove the entire world he's the best technical fighter, and lastly being willing to dominate and also fight with much more aggression against Usyk. We've often seen cases when AJ faces opponents that are quite hostile in nature and character, whereby immediately responding to that energy coming into the ring on full smoke and nothing but violence, with previous opponents with the likes of Dominic Brazil and Dylan White. While on the flip side, when his opponents enter the ring on a humble approach, Joshua also reciprocates that energy and seems to enter the fight with a lot less aggression and intent to dominate the fight, with both his fights with Andy Ruiz Jr. and Alexander Usyk. And during this period of time, AJ and his team have explicitly mentioned him perhaps taking an interim fight before the future rematch with Usyk whenever he's able to return. And according to some sources, interest on both teams have been expressed in potentially facing off against the British heavyweight Joe Joyce, who currently stands at 6'6" tall and holds a current record of 13 wins and 0 losses, by achieving 12 total knockouts while maintaining an impressive knockout percentage of 92%. And whether or not this fight might come to fruition sometime this year, it will certainly be an entertaining matchup to watch nonetheless. With the official pay-per-view event on ESPN set to the 23rd of April 2022 in North London, Tyson Fury and Dylan White will both square off for the WBC Heavyweight Championship title. For White, this will be his second fight since taking a loss during his match with Povetkin that ended in a crushing victory in August 2020, but managed to redeem his loss during their rematch in early 2021. Whereas for the Gypsy King, this fight marks as his first fight since defeating and also concluding the trilogy against Deontay Wilder, which ultimately ended in an emphatic victory over the Bronze Bomber in all 3 scheduled bouts. Within the last couple of years, from 2020, Fury has a record of 2-0 when he crushed Wilder in the second fight, which caused Wilder's corner throwing in the towel midway through the 7th as a TKO victory. And then in their second meeting, Wilder put up a much tougher fight this time around, as Fury initially dropped Wilder down to the canvas in the 3rd, and then Wilder responds back with a knockdown in the 4th, and then responds again with another knockdown just at the end of the round, meaning that Deontay was leading by a single knockdown. And during rounds 5 through 9, Fury had recovered and regained his mojo back by leading in the scorecards, then dropped Wilder again in the 10th, and then effectively put the entire fight and also the entire trilogy to bed with a shattering knockout punch in the 11th. And acknowledging how this trilogy went down, Fury is now certainly entering this new matchup with exceeding confidence. While on the other hand, White has a record of 1 win and 1 loss in both his bouts with Alexander Povetkin since 2020, and Povetkin was ranked as number 6 according to the Ring magazine and also the 9th best fighter according to the WBC power rankings. White entered the fight with a good intensity and floored Povetkin twice in the 4th, achieving 2 knockdowns. And unfortunately for White, aka the body snatcher, ironically got his own body snatched by a devastating uppercut which effectively ended the fight during the 5th round by KO. Now, during their rematch fight, White redeemed himself and took control of the fight from early and never looked back, and finally dropped Povetkin in the 4th, which led to Povetkin struggling to beat the stand count just as his corner threw in the towel to stop the fight. And although the body snatcher avenged his loss, we must also remember the manner in which he was defeated, by having both his body and soul literally at the exact same time being snatched on the canvas, not exactly knowing what had happened. And so White must be careful when stumbling into a brawl by potentially leaving himself exposed for a vicious counter, as well as considering the fact that Fury has the great advantage both in height and reach, and is certainly something he must look out for when he decides to reduce the fighting distance. And for Fury, the trilogy also showed that the man himself also has his weaknesses. Across the entire trilogy, there were a total of 4 knockdowns when Fury was floored down to the canvas by Wilder, 2 during their first bout, with 1 in the 9th and 1 in the 12th, and then a pair of knockdowns within the 4th round during their final fighting bout. And in the majority of these instances, Fury was put down to the canvas by Wilder's patented 2-punch combo, often set up with his left to then immediately offload his right hand power punch. And although Fury dominated Wilder during the entire trilogy, and as great as the Gypsy King may be, Tyson still did not have an answer to stop this lethal combination. During fights, we have seen many other heavyweight fighters that were not able to exactly recover from those heavy blows by Wilder, and even for Tyson Fury, this combination still proved to be quite troublesome. And power punches are definitely something that Fury must be wary of, and with the fight just round the corner, it will certainly be a good matchup, granted that both fighters don't come into the match underestimating their opponent. And within the nature of the heavyweight division, you can never entirely predict the tail of events of a fight. So hopefully this time around, Dylan actually turns up to the fight, even despite intentionally skiving the press conference for whatever reason. And this ultimately left Fury, his promoter, and the rest of his team to conduct the conference all by themselves. Literally, all by themselves. Talk about professionalism. Now, you have the situation of Deontay Wilder with regards to his uncertain future within the division and also his potential upcoming opponents. At this current point in time, not much is entirely known whether he might pursue the interest in fighting AJ sometime in the distant future, or the idea to still continue participating within the race towards becoming the undisputed champion of the world, even despite experiencing 2 setback losses in his career. But I believe it's an opportunity to learn and to also grow to become a better fighter. And between Joshua and Wilder, there have been many months with several instances where both teams have gone back and forth for potentially signing fighting contracts. And according to some sources, Wilder doesn't seem interested to pursue the fight with Joshua, even despite AJ's team showing great interest to chase the fight. And I think the reason's quite simple. Wilder seems quite reluctant to face AJ within the ring. And in my personal opinion, contrary to popular belief, I believe this matchup is definitely not entirely one-sided. And I do agree on paper, AJ seems to have more strength with raw boxing IQ and better technical ability, but Deontay can certainly demonstrate how he's accomplished a knockout percentage of 91% with 41 knockouts out of 45 career fights by showing what he's entirely capable of doing. And yes, I do acknowledge the fact that he fought against part-time school teachers and part-time bus drivers, and so he never really faced amazing competition along his rise to becoming the WBC champion. Nonetheless, on paper, both seem to match up fairly well with regards to height and reach, with Deontay having an inch in advantage in reach and also being an inch taller than Joshua. Both fighters also have 2 losses to their name, as well as accomplishing similar achievements during their fighting careers. Although I do personally recognize the fact of my slight bias towards Joshua, if you didn't know, but then now you know. I'm still nowhere delusional to say that AJ will knock Wilder out cold within the opening seconds of the first round, but I do think AJ is able to defeat Wilder, but just maybe not in an overwhelming fashion as some people might believe, or the fight might might be turned on its own head by AJ getting slumped with an unexpected knockout blow. Who knows? And I guess that's the most exciting thing about the sport. And for those of you watching that are nodding your head in agreement with me, let me know. And for some of you that are watching while shaking your head in disagreement, also let me know. Make sure to share your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. Thank you all for tuning into this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.